Good morning, realtors and community members, and welcome to our election analysis and 2021 forecast featuring NAR's Government Affairs Advocacy team. I'm Jessica Bryan, your Orange Chatham Association of Realtors president. And before I introduce our speakers, I would like to introduce you to one of our new partnerships, the CE Shop, and two of our three foundation sponsors for 2021. So please welcome first Barbara Wilkinson from the CE Shop.
Well, hey everyone, thank you so much for having me and happy Friday. Hope you guys are having a great day. I'm thrilled to show you a little bit about our new partnership with Orange Chatham, and I am going to share my screen here to show you a little bit about what the partnership looks like. Some of you may be familiar with the CE Shop, I'm not sure, but we are award-winning, nationwide, online, self-paced education for all realtors. So that kind of gives you a snapshot of what the CE Shop is. And with our partnership, we've developed a co-branded website with y'all. And this is to provide all the members access to a great online education. In North Carolina now, we offer a full slate of pre-license, post-license, as well as continuing education. And basically, if you wanted to access and take any of our classes, you would go to this co-branded URL site and sign up for your classes here. This will benefit the Orange Chatham as well. And I know all of you have your license already, but I did want to point out we do offer pre-license. You're welcome to extend that offering out to any friends and family you may have. We do offer post-license now. We were approved for this learning method in October. So we're very excited about this, and this is a great way for all of you to access and remain active, because we want you to remain active. And now that North Carolina has limited the time frame to 18 months, this is a great opportunity for you. Here is our continuing education offering as well. And keep in mind, all of our classes are mobile friendly, so they are self-paced. You have 6 months to complete post-license and 30 days for CE classes. You can start on your mobile phone and finish up later on your computer. We are always running a promotion of some type. You'll be able to see the codes here. Just make sure you put those codes in at the end, and you'll get a great value as well, because that'll be off of the prices listed here. I do know there is a flash sale coming up January 27th. I believe Ashley's probably emailed that out to all the members, and that will be a 40 off one day only sale. So great opportunity for you all to give this a try. And I think I've got it all covered. I'm not sure if I'm over my time frame. I apologize, but Kaba, Ashley, was there anything else you wanted me to show?
I think we're all good. Thank you so much, Barbara.
Yeah, great to be here. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Barbara. Next, we have Tom Holt with Bagwell, Holt & Smith. And Tom, if you will unmute and say a few words of welcome.
Thanks, Barbara. I'm pleased to be here and really appreciate the opportunity to be a foundation sponsor once again. I'm a huge supporter of the association and everything that the association does to help us practice in real estate better, as well as opportunities to support community causes. I think I know everyone that's here, but if anyone is not familiar with our firm, we have offices in Chapel Hill, Morrisville, and Greensboro. We do settlement services as well as other areas of law practice, and really look forward to working with you this next year. We had a incredible and incredibly challenging year last year. Incredible just by the sheer volume of real estate transactions that have been happening in the area, and challenging with the different protocols that we have to follow to try to stay safe while we do it. But we're constantly trying to adapt to the changing circumstances, and look forward to any kind of feedback that you have based on your experiences as well. And look forward to working with you all in a team effort for 2021. So, and I'm looking forward to hearing this presentation. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Tom, for your review and your clients, and we hope that you will take advantage of that. Today for this meeting, I will ask that you please use the chat feature down below for our question and answers that will be at the end of this meeting and as time allows. So let's hope that we have some great questions and some time for some good discussion, but please wait until the end of the meeting. You can go ahead and put your questions in as they come to your mind, and Ashley will monitor them, and then after our speakers are through, we'll go ahead and read those. Thank you all for joining us today, and now on to our main event. Our presenters today are Drew Myers and Joe Harris from the National Association of Realtors. Drew Myers joined the association in April of 2019 after managing a successful campaign for the Congress. Prior to that, he spent several years leading policy and advocacy efforts as the Director of Policy and Strategic Development at the Columbia Chamber of Commerce in South Carolina's capital city. Drew currently serves as the federal political representative, where he guides federal RPAC disbursements, implements targeted campaigns in support of federal candidates, and serves as liaison to state and local realtor associations in 7 states across the Southeast and Mid-Atlantic regions of the United States. Drew is a native of South Carolina, and he received his master's degree from the University of South Carolina and his bachelor's degree from Newberry College. He currently lives in Alexandria, Virginia, with his fiance and their 3 dogs. Joe Harris joined the National Association of Realtors in September of 2015 after serving 8 years in senior legislative positions in the U.S. House of Representatives and U.S. Senate. Joe currently serves as Vice President, Government Advocacy, where he guides NAR's federal legislative and political activity before Congress and the White House. In Congress, he served 2 years as counsel to former U.S. Senator and Vice Presidential nominee Joe Lieberman, and 6 years as legislative assistant and later as legislative counsel to House Budget Committee Chairman John Spratt. He advised both Senator Lieberman and Congressman Spratt in the areas of tax, financial services, insurance, economic policy, budget, and trade, among other issues. Joe is a graduate of the University of South Carolina School of Law and Davidson College, where he currently serves as a member of the Davidson College Board of Visitors. He's also a frequent guest lecturer at Kogod School of Business at American University. Please welcome both to OCHAR. Gentlemen, you're on.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Jessica. And Cub, what a wonderful video introduction as well. I'm very impressed. That's much more than we usually get. So kudos to you all there. I'll just say briefly, without running back through the entire introduction, I want to point out, because I think it's important that both Joe and I hail from the great state of South Carolina, with both having strong connections to the state of North Carolina as well. Joe, of course, going to college there, as was mentioned. And I am just a few weeks out from, fingers crossed, what we hope is a wonderful wedding there just outside of beautiful Charlotte to my fiance, who was born and raised in Charlotte and has family across North Carolina. So Strong connections in DC at NAR with back home with our folks in the Carolinas, and I don't hesitate to get back to the Carolinas as often as I can. I'm sure Joe would say the same thing. I will try to share my screen here with you all. Give me just 1 second. Let's see here. Give me a thumbs up if you can now see the PowerPoint. Great. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. So smooth sailing today. So I will jump right into just a couple of brief stats and facts about this previous election, the cycle and election cycle in 2020. I certainly want to touch on our engagement as RPAC. And then I'm going to kick it over to Joe. I know Joe has a lot of great insight to share with you regarding our legislative efforts and our work on the Hill in DC. And certainly thrilled to be joined, to have the opportunity to join him today in this presentation. So I think it's safe to say that 2020 brought with it its own unique challenges with regard to the pandemic and how it's affected our lives. And the political arena wasn't spared. Elected officials and campaigns had to rethink how they engage with their constituents and voters. Advocacy organizations and PACs like RPAC had to pivot while remaining agile to ensure that we were both meeting the moment and remaining effective advocates of realtors in the industry. And through all the challenges that COVID created, oh, by the way, we were also in a presidential election year. Now, RPAC doesn't get involved with presidential elections, as many of you probably know, never has, but we certainly engage in supporting our champions in Congress, and we did so effectively in 2020. Generally speaking, our high-level strategic approach to each election cycle is to maintain a balance in Congress to the extent possible. Now, you may be thinking, well, in this cycle, Democrats took control of the White House. They now have control of the Senate with Vice President Harris's deciding vote, and they remained in control of the House of Representatives. That doesn't sound very balanced at all. Technically, you would be right, but remember that realtor advocacy efforts are less about political party and more about really maintaining a true balance in Congress, and then how that impacts our ability to continue to advocate for you and on behalf of the real estate industry. The Senate, as I mentioned, is literally split right down the middle, 50-50 at the moment, 50-48, I guess, technically, but of course there are two independents that caucus with the Democrats. So 50-50 there with Vice President Harris's deciding vote. Republicans did gain some seats in the House this last cycle, bringing them to, I believe right now we're sitting at 11 seats minus the majority. So with an additional 11 seats, the Republicans would take over the majority. So Democrats hold majority in the House, and in a 435 member House, that's neck and neck. So on the whole, I think we feel really good about where we're coming out of 2020 with regard to our ability to continue to effectively advocate for realtors and the real estate industry. So getting into RPAC and our role in the election, how did we engage and contribute to this election cycle? RPAC spent about $4 million on RPAC direct contributions to members of Congress or to federal candidates. Also spent about $4 million on what we call realtor opportunity races, and I'll get into that here in just a minute. In addition to that, we spent about $20 million on federal independent expenditure races this year. And so these are campaigns that are directed to the general public as opposed to campaigns that are directed only to realtor members, which are what our opportunity races are. And then finally, we spent about $6 million through our American Property Owners Alliance. On the opportunity race side, and let me take just a quick step back. I won't go into too much detail here, but just to share with you, for those of you that may be unfamiliar, we run through RPAC what we call opportunity races, which are our ability to support candidates that we're supportive of with a campaign that is directed to members, so to realtor members in the congressional district or in the state. So we ran a total of 83 opportunity races supporting realtor champions across the country this year, or this past cycle, and emerged victorious in an impressive 88% of these races. It's also important to note that just as our direct contributions to members of Congress are split about 50-50 each cycle between Republicans and Democrats, this past cycle it was 51% contributions to Democrats and 49% contributions to Republicans. So too are our opportunity races. In this past cycle, our numbers ended up about 52% to Republicans, 48% to Democrats on the opportunity race funding. So we like to say that we're the most bipartisan PAC in the country, and our numbers truly back that up each cycle. And you can go back and look again in previous cycles. We strive hard to maintain that balance, and there are reasons we do that, and you'll hear more about that here soon. Same holds true for our federal IEs. We engaged this past cycle in 12 independent expenditure campaigns on the federal level across the country. And thus far have emerged victorious in 7 of those 12. There's still one remaining. There's a congressional district in New York that is still undecided at this point, tied up in some court battles and some recounts and the like. In North Carolina specifically, we supported each of your incumbent members of Congress with a direct contribution, including Senator Tom Tillis, who was up for re-election this cycle. This past cycle, you had 3 open seats there. As you probably recall, the 2nd Congressional District, which is now held by Congresswoman Deborah Ross, the 6th Congressional District, which is now held by Congresswoman Kathy Manning, and then the 11th, which is now held by Congressman Madison Cawthorn. We did provide support to Congresswoman Ross and Congresswoman Manning in their races, and we remain neutral in that NC-11 race, meaning we did not engage with any contributions or direct support there in the 11th Congressional. I should clarify that when I say we engaged, of course, I'm referring to NAR's RPAC, which operates only on the federal level, but all of our decisions to provide support to a candidate, whether it's a direct contribution or even additional support like an opportunity race, all of that's voted on initially by the state trustees of whichever state. So in this case, of course, the North Carolina state trustees. So your realtor colleagues from across the state that vote on these things and ultimately send their requests up to the federal trustees for approval. Beyond our work on the federal level, NAR RPAC also has a fantastic state and local campaign arm that provides resources to state and local associations at their request. So this includes executing state and local independent expenditure campaigns to support state or local candidates, as well as what we call our state and local issues mobilization program, which provides grants to help support or defeat ballot measures in your state. In total, we engaged in over 450 state and local IEs in 2020, ended up with a win rate right now of about 73%, still a few outstanding, and supported 16 different ballot measures, including one in Raleigh helping to pass an affordable housing bond initiative there. So all in all, while the 2020 cycle certainly presented its own challenges, unlike anything that we've seen before, it was still a successful 2 years for NAR's RPAC political activity. As I alluded to in my opening, a balanced Congress tends to yield a more centrist agenda, which generally is beneficial to our industry. And I know that Joe Harris will talk more about why that's important as he gets more into what we can expect from this 117th Congress in 2021. So with that, I'll kick it over to Joe for more.
Thanks, Drew, and good afternoon, everyone. It is great to be with all of you virtually. Usually we're obviously used to doing these in person, but the times that we're in, facilitate having to do these virtually. But as Drew mentioned, I head up the government advocacy team, which is part of the advocacy group. Within the advocacy group, there are 4 different teams, and I head up government advocacy, which consists of the lobby team, 6 lobbyists, all the political representatives, including Drew and others, the FPC program, and the American Property Owners Alliance, which is our 501c4. So it keeps us very busy. And as you can imagine, there's been no shortage of things going on in Washington, D.C. I think this past year, if it's taught us anything, is how impactful the relationships that we've worked so hard to forge over many years have played in getting things done this past year. I mean, the pandemic has obviously affected the way that we go about our business. Since the middle of March, the House and the Senate office buildings have been closed to any type of traffic beyond staff and members of Congress. And really, even members of Congress haven't been in DC since the option to do remote hearings was put on the table with some House rule changes. So during normal times, our job really does depend on walking the halls, attending in-person events, going to committee hearings, grabbing coffee, dropping by the office. And we weren't able to do any of that. So it really does, I think, is a great testament to our team that we have long-standing relationships. If you're trying to make a connection or forge a relationship in 2020 with members of Congress and staff, good luck with that. It is very difficult, I think, not to have that face-to-face. So it also facilitated being creative. We had to be very creative in how we kept up with those connections. Zoom coffees, Zoom happy hours. I've been involved in Zoom cigar breaks, anything fun and anything different to keep staff engaged. When it was warm outside, we played golf if that's what they wanted to do. As Drew knows, I recently, my wife and I recently welcomed a little boy about 8 weeks ago. And so I shamelessly emailed and texted baby pics to several members of Congress and staff. Anything I have to do to have an excuse to check in, stay engaged, not lose touch, and keep that conversation going. You have to be creative and flexibility. Obviously, we had our agenda of things that we wanted to discuss. GSA reform comes to mind. We had a big plan to push that last year, but with the pandemic, we had to change course. You have to cater your advocacy to the moment. You can't try to pigeonhole something in there that doesn't fit. So instead of talking about GSA reform, we started talking about broadband deployment and underserved communities, for instance. We also took the time to offer some ideas that we thought could help get the economy back on track during the recovery period, with the understanding that a lot of that stuff will be put on hold until after the economy was rescued. There's a difference between rescuing the economy, helping people pay their bills, stay on track, and also the longer term recovery period, which comes later. And there's also research and statistics. One of the things that was very important for us is that we're not just a money organization. We have a lot of research. We provide a lot of statistics, and this enables us to stay relevant. And it doesn't matter whether you get money from us or not. When it comes to making important decisions about what's facing this country, I think it's helpful to have that robust economic and forecasting team, the statistics team, the research team, and FPCs know very well. We provide a lot of information, district-wide, statewide information, and information on forbearance numbers, PPP loans, how we're doing on fair housing action plan. All these things help members of Congress and staff make informed decisions during times of crisis. So I'm very proud of that. If we could, looking ahead to the 117th and what we're looking at, Drew mentioned it, there's going to be very tight margins. And that's something that Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer understand very well. Their slim majority can be wiped out in the midterm elections in 2022. So themes that we're watching for this year, obviously everything centers around COVID-19 and economic recovery. I think folks on both sides understand that this is going, if people don't feel safe going back out into the economy is not going to recover in earnest. And so it's very important to get the vaccines out, to make sure that folks are, that the opportunity is there when the first responders and the primary care folks and all the other folks in essential roles get their vaccines. It's important to get them out as quickly as we can and as safely as we can. Because ultimately we can pass all the legislation we want on the federal level. It's not going to mean anything if we don't open the economy back up. And I think everybody understands that. In terms of Biden's administration and his agenda, I think he wants some early bipartisan wins, that's for sure. But he's also has plans to focus on issues like climate change and social justice issues, things that a lot of folks in the Democratic caucus have been talking about for the past couple years. So he's going to try to meld large bipartisan bills with some bills that have been sort of considered in the House but didn't go very far in the Senate. He's going to look to push through a few of those. He also introduced on January 14th something called the American Rescue Plan, a $1.9 trillion agenda that I think he dubbed it 100 million Americans in the first 100 days getting a vaccine. That's their goal. I think they also want to send out another stimulus. There's some money for rental and small landlord support. Safely reopening schools is another priority of this administration. So there's money in there. I think 170 billion to reopen all of America's K-8 schools in the first 100 days. More money for unemployment insurance. And of course, something that has been talked about and debated a lot in the Senate is another round of money for state and local governments that have seen huge budget shortfalls, be able to provide those essential services that are needed during a pandemic. Obviously, another priority for President Biden is getting his cabinet in place, getting folks nominated. So the expedited nomination process is going to help with that, thanks to a rules change by Mitch McConnell several years ago that President Trump took advantage of. Now President Biden only needs 51 votes to clear his nominees. So we expect the committees are going to work to process his nominees over the next several months. Drew alluded to this before, but the impact of the moderates, something we're both watching, and potential Senate party switchers. With the margin as thin as it is, there's going to be obviously a lot of speculation about a potential party switcher, like a Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia. The last time the Senate was deadlocked was in 2001, and Senator Jim Jeffords from Vermont switched from Republican to Independent, caucused with the Democrats, and tilted the balance of power. I'm not expecting Joe Manchin to switch parties. It's a lot of fun to speculate and talk about. I do expect folks like Joe Manchin, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, other moderate senators to have an outsized influence on the political process. Their votes are not a given. And I think that Joe Manchin is going to be looking for opportunities to work across the aisle, as are folks like Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. Lastly, the immediate focus on 2022 seems silly when we just swore in a new president to talk about 2022, but that election cycle has already started. It started on day one and in many cases started after that last election. The party committees are already looking ahead to 2022. So that means that Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy in the House, Minority Leader Mitch McConnell in the Senate, they're going to be looking to take advantage of any missteps that are taken by President Biden and Speaker Pelosi to try to capitalize on that. And it'll be interesting to see how much cooperation there is when in the back of their minds, they're thinking about returning to power in 2022. If we could switch slides on to other legislative items that NAR is tracking. Infrastructure, obviously, that remains one of the few big pieces of legislation that could garner bipartisan support. Is something that President Biden has talked a lot about during the campaign. House Democrats are pushing for a comprehensive plan, which in addition to your traditional surface transportation projects also include water, broadband, affordable housing. They want to see an expanded sort of definition of what constitutes infrastructure. But there's still disagreements on the scope of that legislation and obviously how it's going to be paid for. And those are issues that were barriers when this bill was brought up before. They remain barriers. So this is something that President Biden is going to have to get behind. He's going to have to put a lot of political capital behind getting something like this done. But he wants a big bipartisan bill to help shepherd in this era of unity that he talked about in his inauguration speech. Fair housing, another issue that NAR has really become a leader in the past couple of years. A huge focus of Financial Services Chairwoman Maxine Waters. She now has an enthusiastic champion in the incoming HUD Secretary Marcia Fudge. So they're going to be looking to strengthen the nation's fair housing and fair lending enforcement infrastructure. Those are areas that we're focused on as well. And we see a lot of opportunity to work with this administration on affordable housing, what to do. So a consequence of this pandemic has been obviously the hit to the commercial real estate market. And I know when I'm driving around in Bethesda, Maryland, where I live, there are a lot of vacant buildings that aren't doing anybody any good. They're not doing the local government any good because they're not getting any local tax revenues. They're obviously not doing the banks any good that hold the note on those properties. So looking for federal efforts to encourage financial incentives or zoning relief for conversion projects of office buildings to apartments or condos or other, other housing that's not a single family home that could be part of our effort to combat affordable housing. You got to start thinking outside the box, and the way that we've operated in the past is just not going to cut it. So we're going to be looking to work with local governments, with the federal government, and trying to grease the wheels on getting that done. I mentioned GSA reform before. There's obviously been a lot of chatter about that. We've been championing a privately held utility model to get the Fannie and Freddie out of conservatorship. They've been there for a very long time. This is a bipartisan issue. This is another area where we feel like we can try to forge an agreement, get some things done, and move the needle. The first-time homebuyer tax credit. I've spoken with Ways and Means Chairman Richie Neal about the Vice President's plan to have the $15,000 first-time homebuyer tax credit. Some of you may have been following what's been going on during the campaign. President Biden talked about this a lot. They understand the difficulty that potential first-time homebuyers, specifically minority homebuyers, have in saving enough money for a down payment, and they know the benefits of homeownership, building wealth, having equity. And I believe this is another bipartisan issue that we can get significant support from members of Congress on both sides of the aisle if we put our full weight behind it. And we've been approached by a couple members on Ways and Means who are trying to put this proposal, this plan, this framework, as it was introduced by President Biden, into legislative text. So we definitely intend to support that. And lastly, long-term NFIP reauthorization. Seems like we talk about this all the time. flood insurance is one of those things. It's been extended through September 30th, 2021. You know as well as I do, Congress is going to wait till the last minute to reauthorize this thing, but we're hoping to get a long-term deal. We're hoping to get a 5-year plus deal. And we know that it can be bipartisan. This bill, NFIP reauthorization, passed the Financial Services Committee unanimously last year. Died in the Senate, but you literally got every Democrat and every Republican on the House Financial Services Committee to support reauthorization. Chairwoman Maxine Waters feels confident she can do it again. Now that the Democrats are in charge in the Senate, there's a hope that we can move to get a long-term bipartisan deal. So I know there's a lot there, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about what we expect legislatively or any political questions you might have as well.
Okay, thank you very much, both of you gentlemen. That's very informative. Ashley, have you been monitoring, and do we have any questions?
Yes, I have two so far. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to go ahead and drop those in the chat so I can read those. The first one is, how can RPAC support candidates and elected officials who express views that are in opposition to Realtor Code of Ethics 10.5, dealing with harassing or hate speech or discrimination against protected classes?
So is that I'm assuming that's in reference to the insurrection? Is that,
Let me just ask whoever asked the question, if you can unmute yourself and clarify.
well, yeah. So I'll try to take a stab at answering it, and Drew, jump in here. I will say, having worked on Capitol Hill for 8 years, having had the pleasure of walking around the Capitol, working in the Capitol, it was January 6th was a very sad day for all of us who love the institution and have spent a lot of time trying to make it better, trying to improve people's lives. This is an area where, as you know, NER has decided to take a step back and evaluate our giving, our RPAC giving, our federal disbursements. It was, I think, the right thing to do. It was not the call of the lobby team or Shannon McGann or our CEO, but ultimately it was the call of our NER RPAC trustees. And they made the call to have everybody kind of take a step back, take a breath, try to make some sense out of what was going on. And hopefully in short order, the RPAC trustees are going to make a decision going forward on how we make our contributions. But, I'm a proud RPAC contributor. I think it's important for me to practice what I preach. I know that it does a lot of good. I know that we get a lot of credit in DC for being so balanced in terms of our giving. And so I like to see us resume, but I'd also agree that there should be a plan in place to make decisions. And there are. It's not like it's not like our process under normal circumstances is haphazard. There's a lot that goes into it. What committees they serve on, what legislation they champion for us, whether they send a letter to the Treasury or to the Fed on our behalf. A lot of things go on behind the scenes that not everybody knows about, that are important to our industry and important to the work that we do in DC and the work that you do in North Carolina. And so nothing that we do is done in a vacuum. It's a lot of thought goes into it. And I will just say that this latest incident is no exception. There's a lot of thought and a lot of discussion going into it. And there are opinions on all sides of this, and everyone's entitled to their opinion. Everybody's entitled to voice their opinion. And one thing I always say, a great quote comes to mind. One of the things that we do is we try to educate our members about, the reality, the truth. Because you're, at the end of the day, you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own set of facts. And so I think it's part of our job to stand on truth, to stand on facts, and to educate people as best we can. And as you can imagine, it's sometimes it can be a difficult process, but I think we're doing about as good as we can. Drew, you have anything to add?
You covered it, Joe. I second everything Joe just said. The only thing that I would add that I think is important to continue to keep in mind and has been in place as part of our process in the past, and I suspect will continue to be in place many years into the future, because I think it really is one of the reasons why we were able to have the success that we have politically with regard to our work on campaigns and supporting candidates and such, is that for us, it starts with the state trustees. I work hand in hand with the RPAC state trustees in each state that I cover, in many discussions, presenting information and insights and analysis to them before decisions are made. And ultimately, the state trustees take a vote on the contributions that we're providing and to whom we're providing them to. As well as, again, as I mentioned earlier, other work like opportunity races and that type of thing. So we really lean heavily and rely on our realtor members in the states to, voice their opinions and ultimately to have their say and take a vote on whom it is that they believe we should be supporting and to what extent. And all of that, of course, is taken and presented to our federal trustees once the state trustees have kind of passed judgment there, presented to the federal trustees, and ultimately, of course, the federal trustees make the decision. But again, very important to keep that in mind. These decisions aren't made in a vacuum or in a small room sitting in an office somewhere in DC. It's important that we stay in touch and remain in touch, keep our finger kind of our ear to the ground or our finger on the pulse of what our members see and hear and believe in the states that in districts they're living in.
Thank you, Drew and Joe, for that answer. I wanted to ask one extra question about that. How do our individual members best express their opinions? Can you give us a clarification?
I think the hub is a place where a lot of folks go to ask questions, to seek clarification, to voice opinions. You can talk to Drew, you can talk to myself, and we can pass along your concerns, your questions, your whatever it is you want to express. I mean, we're your contacts with NAR, and we take our job of listening and taking the information back to our respective parts of the organization very seriously. And I know that we've been hearing a lot about one of the things I try to tell, because as you probably imagine, we get a lot of questions from different candidates. When can we, hey, what are you guys doing? What's the timeline? And we stand by the statement that our trustees worked very hard to craft, that, a decision will be made when it's made. It's important to know that it is still January, 21st, 22nd. A new president's just been sworn in. As a normal procedure and matter of course for our RPAC decisions, we don't ever really release money in the first quarter of a new election cycle anyway. We prefer to wait and see how members of Congress vote on important issues. I found that when you start maxing folks out early, there's no incentive for them to, vote your way, or they could have a horrible vote, and there's no recourse. The money's already out the door. So we're already very careful. We have a very lengthy process in terms of deciding, how much folks get and when they get that money. It's trickled out. So we're right on schedule. Q1 goes until March 31st. And, under normal situations, I tell people all the time, NAR is very judicious in getting money out because we want to see, and I referenced this before, the committees haven't even been created yet. We haven't staff fully decided who's on what committee. And in the Senate, it could take a while. Mitch McConnell and Leader Schumer are still trying to negotiate a power sharing agreement that decides, among other things, what the ratios are going to be on these committees. Is it going to be 50-50? Some of them will be 50-50. Some will be, there'll be maybe one or two more Democratic members, but these are important. Do you allow some Republicans to chair some committees? So all of these are being worked out. My point is there's still a lot to be done with our normal, this is just a normal cycle kind of questions checklist that we go through to decide who gets what and where our attention is drawn with regard to any of our contributions. And that is still working itself out. So as far as I'm concerned, we're on course. We're on schedule for doing what we would normally do under normal circumstances. Of course, understanding that it's not a normal year, right? But I just point that out just to assure folks that we're not somehow behind schedule or behaving in a way that we wouldn't normally behave. I think that we're on schedule in terms of our RPAC discussions.
Thank you.
Um,
You have another question?
I do. Is there any effort to help those homeowners who have had a mortgage in forbearance to require that lenders recast their loan to prevent foreclosure, which can damage property values, impacting local neighborhoods?
So they're part of the COVID relief legislation, several iterations that passed last year and one that passed in December. And I think that President Biden signed an executive order sort of extending that eviction moratorium, but also extending relief to landlords, small mom and pop landlords. There is a realization that this pandemic is dragging on and that people, we talk about affordable housing, but I think it's fine for folks who are renting who want to become homeowners. But I think first things first, we need to make sure people can stay in their homes, whether they're renting or whether they own. And making mortgage payments has become very difficult. And so part of the reason for extending the time that the forbearance, I think speaks to that. There's a realization that things are not getting better for a lot of people. And I think that's a frustration that you saw expressed during this last election. So we have a lot of effort in keeping the drumbeat up on assisting homeowners, assisting people who are renting, quite frankly, to stay in their homes and have the ability to get back on their feet. And I think a lot of the loans, like the PPP and the EIDL loans, we worked to get those forgiven. So we're trying as hard as we can to hit this problem from as many different angles as we can. Understanding, as I pointed out, that it's just, honestly, we're always playing catch up, always. Because until people feel safe going out to eat, going to the movies, You know, going back to school, the situation economically is still, we're always going to be playing catch up. And I think that's why you heard President Biden talk about his desire to go big, go bold on the next COVID relief package. Maybe that will include some changes to the tax code, to have some tax forgiveness for folks, middle class Americans. Maybe that will include some type of infrastructure component. I do know that they want to do some things that are not just, you know, ad hoc, a little bit here, a little bit there. They want to try to have all of these provisions passed as part of a cohesive, not message, but just a cohesive response to what's been a lingering problem. But it all begins with the healthcare aspect of this. It all begins with folks getting back to work in a normal way. And some of those jobs won't be coming back, a lot of them will, but it all is predicated upon you and me feeling safe taking our kids and going to Target or going to vacation and staying in a hotel, or, you know, that impacts every industry. It impacts every facet of our economy. And until that's figured out, you know, we will continue to do what we can, but it's like putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. You can only address so much, but you know, I think the efforts are there. And the decision that lawmakers are now going to have to make is, how bold do they want to go? How much more money do they want to spend before they wait to see what the impact has been on legislation that has already been passed? I know that is a position that Leader McConnell has taken. We've been robust in our spending. Let's kind of wait and see how that goes. On the other side, in the other camp, people want to just keep spending, and they want to particularly divert money to lower income, underserved communities that have been hardest hit by this pandemic. So that's sort of the tussle, the ebb and the flow, the tug of war that's going to happen. And I think that there's an opportunity, and ever the optimist, I think that we are in a very solid position because we tend to support, we tend to work with those members of Congress who are here to roll up their sleeves and get to work. The folks on the Problem Solvers Caucus, the Joe Manchins of the world, the Susan Collins of the world. These are folks who, it's fine to have ideology, it's fine to have your opinions, but when it comes to a national emergency, it's all hands on deck, and folks need to get to work and get the job done. And we see ourselves as unifiers. A lot of the issues that we advocate for are bipartisan. That is a great message, and we welcome that bipartisanship. And I think Americans have spoken. They want to see people work together, particularly now, because it's not getting any easier. So I know it's a kind of a long-winded answer, but I can't impress upon you enough how important the healthcare aspect and the pandemic aspect of all of these things, that is the number one. Without that, none of the other stuff really matters, in my opinion.
Thank you, Joe. Drew, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, Joe's the expert here, especially on the legislative piece. So no, I'll let him handle that.
Okay. Do we have any more questions, Ashley?
No, we don't. Not
Okay.
yet.
I'm sorry?
I said not yet. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and drop it now before we're out of time.
Okay, and also, Joe and Drew, if there's anything else that you wanted to add to or thought of that you wanted to mention, now's the time.
Well, I would take a moment to, because it's on my mind, we recently welcomed a new FPC class, a new class of federal political coordinators, and they've been getting some online virtual training that's going to be ongoing. Usually, obviously, we do this in person, but it's very important, the relationships that the FPCs have with members of Congress. And I've seen this up close with folks like Chairwoman Maxine Waters, who absolutely adores her FPC. It helps to make our job extremely easier and a lot more effective when we can rely on realtors back home really providing that anecdotal information, because at the end of the day, they don't want to hear from us. They kind of know where we're coming from. They want to hear what's going on back home. And so I was emailing with a few FPCs the other day, so it's just fresh in my mind how much passion goes into this job. It's extremely important, and we do appreciate it. I think it bears repeating that the FPC program is extremely important, and I'm glad that it's that I'm now VP of Government Advocacy and get to oversee the FPC program. It's very important to the work that we do as a lobby team, and I'm sure Drew feels the exact same way.
Yeah, I would just echo that. And, it kind of goes back to where I was headed earlier with the conversation about the state RPAC trustees and hearing from them and taking in all of their thoughts and opinions. I think the same holds true with FPCs. The general idea there is the same, in that we are better prepared and better able to do our jobs in DC when we have that kind of on the ground feedback from members. And we get that from you all with our engagement. We get that on the political side from the trustees and that are your colleagues from their engagement. And then of course with the FPCs as well. It helps us keep our finger on the pulse of what you're all are hearing and the direction that things are going in your district or in your state. And that's really crucial to ensuring we, or continue to head in the right direction with our advocacy efforts.
Thank you. Joe Harris, Drew Myers, you guys do a great job for us, and we thank you for your commitment, and you're taking time out of your very, very busy schedules to speak with our members today. That's so appreciated. I think we've probably gone through all of the questions that we have for you. I would like to thank all of our members today for coming and joining this very interesting hour. I do want to remind you that in February, we have a really great session coming with North Carolina's own Lee Brown, who will be guiding us on managing multiple offers. And now, if you haven't had a chance to meet Lee Brown or listen to any of her talks, she is not only extremely knowledgeable, but she is so entertaining. So we're in for a treat. And of course, the subject couldn't be more timely, coming into a very busy season in probably starting February and March. So handling of multiple offers is something that's top of mind for all of us. For now, I hope all of you have a great day, a great week, a great month, a great season, a great year, and we'll see you in February. Thanks for coming today. Bye-bye.
Thank you, folks. Take care.
Thank you very much.